The autumn air in Columbus, Ohio, on Friday, October 23, 1998, held that particular crispness that promised winter was just around the corner. For the residents of the city, especially the students of Northwood High, it meant football season was hitting its peak. The stadium lights cut through the early evening gloom, casting an almost theatrical glow over the fervent crowd. Inside that electric atmosphere, amidst the cheers and the rhythmic stomping, was Alex Miller. 17 years old, with a mop of unruly brown hair and a smile that usually reached his eyes, Alex was a quintessential American teenager. He wasn't on the football team, but he was a fixture at every home game, cheering louder than most, particularly when his best friend Mark Jenkins made a tackle. Tonight, Northwood was playing rival Thomas Worthington, and the tension was palpable. Alex, dressed in his favorite faded denim jacket, a band t-shirt, and worn-out sneakers, sat with Mark's girlfriend, Sarah Peterson, and a few other friends in the stands, their breath pluming in the cool air as they yelled themselves hoarse. Alex's life wasn't complicated. He worked part-time at the Blockbuster Video on Sancus Boulevard, saving up for a beat-up Ford Mustang he'd spotted in a local ad. He dreamt of going to Ohio State, maybe studying journalism, though he hadn't fully committed to the idea. His evenings were a predictable rotation of homework, video games, and hanging out with his small, tight-knit group of friends. His parents, Robert and Alina Miller, lived in a modest ranch home in the Blendon Township area, a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. They were good parents, supportive and loving, albeit sometimes a little overprotective. Alex often chafed under their rules, a normal teenage rebellion, but he knew they loved him. He'd promised his mom he'd be home by midnight tonight, a usual curfew that he sometimes stretched by an hour or so. After the game, a triumphant 21-17 victory for Northwood, the celebration spilled out into the parking lot. The plan was to head to Mark's house, just a few miles away, for a low-key gathering. Pizza, soda, and music, the standard Friday night fare. Alex walked with Mark and Sarah, their shoulders bumping, the euphoria of the wind still fizzing in the air. The chill had deepened, and a thin fog had begun to roll in, obscuring the distant city lights. Mark's house was already buzzing when they arrived. The living room was filled with teenagers, the smell of pepperoni and melting cheese mixing with teenage cologne, and the faint scent of something illicit being passed around in the kitchen. Alex, never one for drinking, stuck to soda, laughing at Mark's exaggerated replay of his game-winning tackle. Around 11:30 p.m., Alex realized he was feeling tired. He spotted Mark and Sarah engrossed in conversation by the stereo. He didn't want to interrupt their moment. His house was only a 20-minute walk, maybe less if he cut through the shortcut he knew, a path behind the old abandoned warehouse district off Northland Road that spat him out near his street. It was usually well lit by the streetlights along Northland and Carl Road, and he'd used it countless times. He grabbed his jacket. "Hey guys, I'm gonna head out," he called to no one in particular, thinking Mark would hear him. He waved vaguely at the room. No one seemed to notice him leaving through the back door, intent on their conversations and the blaring music. The fog outside had thickened considerably, swallowing the streetlights and muffling the distant hum of traffic. The air was damp and cold, biting at his exposed skin. He pulled his jacket tighter, shoving his hands into his pockets. He set off down the street, feeling a sudden, unexpected prickle of unease. The usual comforting glow of the city seemed muted, swallowed by the creeping mist. He walked faster, eager to be home, eager for the warmth of his bed. The next morning, Robert and Alina Miller woke to an unsettling quiet. Alex wasn't home. Alina, a woman whose calm demeanor usually masked a quiet worry, felt a familiar tremor of anxiety. "He probably crashed at Mark's," Robert said, trying to reassure her and himself. But as the morning stretched into afternoon and multiple calls to Mark's landline went unanswered, Mark and Sarah were still asleep, oblivious. The tremor turned into a full-blown panic. By 2 p.m., with no word from Alex, Alina called the Columbus Police Department. She tried to keep her voice steady as she explained her 17-year-old son, Alex Miller, had not returned home after the Northwood game. The officer on the other end, polite but routine, explained that teenagers often lost track of time. "Wait 24 hours, ma'am," he advised. "He's probably just with friends." Alina knew, with a mother's instinct, that this was different. Alex might push his curfew, but he never failed to check in, never caused this kind of silence. By Saturday evening, a missing person report was filed. Detective Richard Riley, a veteran of the Columbus PD, was assigned the case. Riley was a man who'd seen too much of the city's underbelly, his face etched with the weariness of years spent chasing shadows. He was methodical, tenacious, but also acutely aware of how quickly a missing persons case could go cold, especially with teenagers. The initial investigation kicked off with a flurry of activity. Riley and his team canvassed Northwood High, speaking to Alex's friends. Mark and Sarah Giltridden recounted Alex's departure from the party. "He just left," Sarah said, tears welling. "He said he was going home. No one saw him get into a car, no one remembered him saying he was meeting anyone else." They described Alex's usual route home, specifically mentioning the shortcut through the warehouse district. The police quickly organized search parties. Uniformed officers, joined by distraught family friends and community volunteers, scoured the wooded areas and abandoned lots near the warehouse district. The fog from Friday night had lifted, replaced by a gray, overcast sky, making the search even more bleak. Posters bearing Alex's smiling face and vital statistics were plastered on lamp posts, bus stops, and storefronts across Columbus. Local news channels picked up the story, reporting on the Northwood teen's disappearance. Alina and Robert, their faces drawn with exhaustion and grief, made tearful appeals on TV, begging for any information. Every lead, however small, was pursued. A sighting of a young man matching Alex's description near a gas station on Carl Road. A vague report of a suspicious dark sedan idling near the warehouse district that night. Every tip led to a dead end. The gas station attendant didn't remember anything specific. The dark sedan was too generic, too common a sight. The shortcut Alex typically took was overgrown in places, littered with debris, but yielded no clues. No discarded jacket, no sneaker, no sign of a struggle. It was as if Alex had simply vanished into the misty Columbus night. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The initial media frenzy faded, replaced by other, newer headlines. The posters began to weather, their colors fading, their edges peeling. The phone calls to the Miller household grew less frequent. Detective Riley, despite his best efforts, found himself hitting brick wall after brick wall. He'd followed every lead, re-interviewed every witness, walked Alex's presumed path home dozens of times. He considered every possibility. Runaway, abduction, accident. Alex wasn't the type to run away. He had no history of trouble, no hidden life. There was no ransom demand, no sign of a struggle. The lack of any evidence, any trace, was the most chilling aspect. The Miller family's life became a permanent state of limbo. Alina and Robert clung to hope, but it was a fragile, painful thing. Every ringing phone, every knock at the door sent their hearts soaring, only to crash down again. Birthdays, holidays, high school graduation, all passed without Alex. The empty chair at the dinner table became a gaping void, a constant reminder of what they had lost. Their once vibrant home felt like a tomb. Robert retreated into himself, working longer hours, his silence a heavy cloak. Alina became an advocate, joining support groups for families of missing persons, her quiet strength masking an ocean of despair. The community, initially so supportive, slowly moved on, the name Alex Miller becoming a whisper, a tragic memory, a local cold case. 7 years later, it was the summer of 2005. The Columbus metropolitan area was booming, and new developments were constantly breaking ground. One such project was a new shopping complex on the northern outskirts, near the intersection of Schrock Road and Eminis 71, a few miles northeast of Alex's old neighborhood. The area, once a mix of small farms and dense woodland, was now being cleared for commercial expansion. On a sweltering Tuesday morning in mid-July, a backhoe operator, clearing a section of thick brush and overgrown trees on a newly acquired parcel, hit something hard. Thinking it was a rock or an old pipe, he backed up to investigate. What he found wasn't a rock. Embedded in the churned earth, partially exposed by the machine, was what looked like the tattered remains of fabric, and beneath it, something unmistakably skeletal. The construction site was immediately secured, and the Columbus Police Department was called. Detective Riley, now older, his hair grayer, but still on the force, was one of the first on the scene. He knew the feeling in his gut immediately. This wasn't just another discovery, this felt different. The area where the remains were found was not far from where Alex Miller had lived, not far from the general direction of Northwood High. Forensic anthropologists and crime scene investigators meticulously excavated the site over the next 2 days. What they uncovered was a shallow grave containing human skeletal remains. The victim had been buried face down. Among the dirt and root systems, they found fragments of faded denim, remnants of a band t-shirt, and a single, worn-out sneaker. Most tellingly, they found a tarnished silver ring, engraved with the initials A. M and class of '99. The call to Robert and Alina Miller came late that Thursday afternoon. Alina answered, her hand trembling. She recognized Detective Riley's voice immediately, even after all these years. His words were careful, compassionate, yet devastating. "Mrs. Miller, we believe we found Alex." The news, though anticipated for years, hit them with the force of a fresh, brutal blow. The small, fragile hope they had unconsciously nurtured for so long, that Alex would one day walk through their door, shattered into a million pieces. The formal identification came quickly. Dental records confirmed it. The remains were indeed Alex Miller. The single sneaker was a match for a model he owned, the ring unequivocally his. The fragments of clothing matched descriptions provided 7 years prior. The forensic examination revealed blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with a violent attack. Alex hadn't run away. He hadn't been a victim of a random accident. He had been murdered. The discovery reignited the cold case with an urgency that had been missing for years. Detective Riley, now with a body and a confirmed cause of death, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The old case files, thick with reports and dead-end leads, were pulled out. The terrain around the discovery site was meticulously examined, historical aerial photographs reviewed. The area, once undeveloped woodland and fields, would have been significantly more isolated in 1998, a perfect place for someone to dispose of a body without immediate detection. The construction had ironically brought Alex home. With the discovery of the body came a renewed media frenzy. The 7-year-old mystery was back in the headlines. Alina and Robert, though still reeling from the shock, found a grim resolve. They had Alex back in a way. Now they needed answers. The cold case team, now expanded, re-interviewed everyone from the original list: Mark, Sarah, other friends, party-goers, the gas station attendant, even the original anonymous caller about the dark sedan. This time the interviews were different. People were older, their memories perhaps clearer or less clouded by the immediate shock. New forensic technologies were applied to the old evidence logs, though limited by what was collected in 1998. They found no significant DNA on the fragments of clothing, likely degraded by 7 years of exposure. However, a detail emerged from a re-interview with Sarah Peterson. She vaguely recalled Alex mentioning, as he left Mark's house that night, that he might catch a ride if he saw someone heading in his general direction. At the time, she dismissed it as typical teenage talk. Now it was a crucial, terrifying piece of information. Could Alex have willingly gotten into a car with someone? The old anonymous tip about a dark sedan near the warehouse district was re-examined. With Alex's body found further north, the connection seemed tenuous but not impossible. Could the killer have picked Alex up, driven him a short distance, attacked him, and then driven to the isolated dumping ground? The case remained agonizingly complex. The discovery of Alex's body provided the Miller family with a semblance of closure, the crushing certainty that their son was gone, but it did not bring justice. The investigation continued, turning over every stone, every piece of old and new information. The area where Alex was found became a poignant landmark, a grim reminder of a life brutally cut short. The people of Columbus remembered Alex Miller, the teen who vanished after a football game, and 7 years later finally came home, though not in the way anyone had ever hoped. The answers, the perpetrator, remained elusive, a shadow still lingering over the bright lights of the city, a testament to the chilling reality of an unsolved American tragedy.